Randi Green here, and welcome to podcast 7, where we are continuing with the webpage Exploring New Ideas Within Business. And as always, I am working to create some questions that will lead to some contemplation processes of how to and where to and in what way to do, depending on our individual features and our individual capacities. Because when we talk about progression work and when we talk about creating changes in reality, each and one of us must work from our own individual viewpoint to unfold our creational potentials in whatever project that we choose to engage on. And that's part of what creates diversity, as well as what creates a world where change can take place. Because it would be so easy if we just asked a question, how to do this, and then everybody would say, well, this is the way we do it, and we all do it uniformly. We all choose to do it the same way. But then we wouldn't have any diversity, would we? We would just have one way of solving things, which to some degree can be useful. But in the long run of creating different forms of energies that leads to transformation of various forms and platforms of energies, we must work in each and one of our individual ways. So hence, unfortunately, answers cannot be given, but we can always ask the questions that will lead to a process from where we can initiate the changes and then learn by these changes and activate our energy system accordingly. So at the section I want to talk about today, and then move into questions to be asked, is that in the work with the progression energies, we must do what we do from an energetically optimal level of commitment to reach an energetically optimal purpose of what we want to achieve. So with that, it means that whatever we choose, I have deliberately written it this way, because the other way I could write this is that in the work with the progression energies, we must do what we do from a correct level of commitment to reach a correct level of purpose of what we want to achieve, or a correct purpose of what we want to achieve. And there's a little bit of difference there, because the moment we use the word correct, people will say correct for who and correct for what. And that's why I changed it into energetically optimal level, which means that it is energetically the highest version for us and our energy system, our consciousness potentials. So that's the idea with writing that instead of saying the correct, because the idea is the same, but on a web page where everybody's just reading from outside, they might kind of stumble upon the word correct, because it seems very similar to, it's an imperative. It's like, do this, do that, correct level. And then some might feel that that's closing down the process, because what is correct? And then we will go into a value system of what's more correct and what's less correct. Where when we work with from an energetically optimal level of commitment and an energetically optimal purpose, well, then it will be according to our energy system, and we put in the dynamics relativity. So that's important to keep in mind, that whatever we do, it must be from what we say the highest purity rate, the highest standards, and the highest progression rate for our energy system, according to where we are, according to what we have of possibilities, and according to what we can put into the mix of creating a transformative reality that leads to what we call transformative dynamics that will rise up the energetic pool that we're all part of. And that's also some of the words I've been talking about when we say we are aiming to change the world. So we are using business to inspire and give the incentive of developing the higher order awareness of our reality and how we can change our world. And that goes with everything we do. If we work being the exemplification of these changes by changing ourselves and working in progressive ways, well, then we'll be the role models for this is a different way of making business. In the beginning, we'll probably meet resistance, because we're working in a different way. And people will say, well, why are you doing this way? We need you to do this, or we need you to do that. But eventually they will see, there's actually some kind of purpose to the madness. They actually has some kind of function to work in that way, even though it will be a little bit confusing if everybody in the world is doing it that way. Similar to when we had this within the new age, it suddenly became okay to cancel appointments on the day and 2 minutes before if we didn't feel up for it. And whereas in the old days, you would follow through out of obligation, out of respect for the other person. So there are these pitfalls as well, where how far can we push it in our individuality and working from our own creational viewpoint, as we're seeing with the millennials, right? Or how much do we go with the old type that we are obligated, and out of respect of the other, we keep our appointments and we follow through with whatever we have put in motion. So it has to be a balance in between these two things, because if we're also working with the understanding of, yes, we might have a plan of what we want to do, but on the day and in that moment, something arises that makes it impossible for us to follow through. Well, then we must be able to adapt and change. And the other person in the other end must also be ready to understand the reasons why. And it doesn't always have to be dire needs or severe incidents of illness and disease and death, but could also just be that factions are not willing to let that one happen because they're not always working within our 2 days notice, right? They sometimes come in an hour before and say, this is not going to happen because the sun and the moon and the stars, as it was said in the old days, are not favorable for that opening and that type of work that you want to do right now. So this is also part of when we work with business, that when we work with the progression energies, we understand that we are not just us, and we're not just our client or the business partner we want to work with, or however we want to arrange our little business when we work with the progression energies. And that's another challenge that must be incorporated in our understanding of the new business models. At least those of us who want to work from a higher awareness viewpoint. If we're just going into the base program, we can follow the directives of what people are normally doing, how they normally do things. Sorry about that. Without taking into consideration these higher order energies. And then there are two ways we can go around this. We can choose to say, okay, I follow through with this because it will just be too much of a hassle to change this. And then we'll take what I call the smack afterwards. Then we'll have to clear the distortion energies. We'll have to clear the factional retaliation or whatever's going on. Some of you might even not experience this. So for you, it's going to be easy. For others, all depending on where we are on the hierarchical curve of genetics, we will have to deal with things accordingly to our energy system. And I think that's important to understand that interaction with our energy system and who and what we were originally, and trying to activate and integrate that, but in the same process, clear out what stands in the way for that to be present inside this reality. Because for me, if we talk about changing the world, well, there are a lot of good people out there that are already talking about we change it this way and that way, what have you. And that it's like the huge motor ship where things are changing very slowly. And I have experienced myself after getting back into the base program that I have got comfort zones I thought I didn't have. But as I go down in energy and becomes part of the base program, begin to dabble with some of the restrictions that are in the base program, the laws and what we can and what we cannot do, which I kind of had while I was up in the rules of engagement and the density laws and the density energies where things work differently. I also had what I can and cannot do, but things work differently. There was not the same rigidness around changing things. There was not the same amount of entropy and resistance that are when we talk about things inside the base program. It's like there is this, interestingly enough, if I compare, yes, in the beginning of the rules of engagement and the factional distress, let me put it that way, that I was under when I went to Australia, that put in a lot of emotional roller coaster tendencies because that was new and my emotional field was not accustomed to it. What is happening for me now is that when I go back into the base program, I'm reconnecting to some of my older levels of how I used to approach it 10 years ago. And I need to upgrade these into, okay, I just plunge right back into it thinking, oh yeah, I got this new perception of reality. So now I'll go back in the base program, go back into what has not been worked with for a while and just go back on the old bike and think that I can just continue as I used to. But no, the chain has to be oiled. The tires have to be pumped. There's so much on my bicycle, not my motorbike, but my bicycle that needs to be taken care of. It's become a little bit rusty and all these things. It's not just about pulling out the shed and then go riding my bike. I actually have to take care of it first. And that's the same with some of the older neural networks I am re-inhabiting as going back into the base program. I firstly go back into my own body, my own fields, and there discover that what I cleared out ages ago were sufficient at that point in time. And then it went up in energy and they were just kind of put dormant. But now I come back with a higher type of energy and a different type of progression dynamics. And then I can see that what I achieved 10 years ago must be upgraded even further to suit the challenges that I now have, and the way I respond, my response mechanism have to be developed as well, because they're a little bit out of date as the chain needs to be oiled and the tires needs to be pumped. So I am functional again within the new perspective of things, working with a new version of my energy system and clear out the layers I thought that were up to speed, but clearly are not, because I'm being challenged on new levels where we could say they are in contact the same as they were back then. But the way I deal with them today, it feels too narrow. It feels this compression of how I can respond, and the emotional response to it is halfway through in this clearing process. And I'm pretty sure many of you will experience that from time to time, where you will discover that when, for instance, when they shift the timelines in our reality field, first and foremost, there's this flash through of energies of your life, so to speak, when they do the relooping. And then once you get back in, you will discover that your spatial features, as in navigating a space, is not completely optimal. You drop things or you bump into things. It's like, did someone change the world suddenly around me? And I would say, actually, yes, the density level of it has changed. I experienced that yesterday. And at the same time, there's this whole, you can't run on your pre-perceptions or precognitions or your pre-assumptions of how things used to be. Now you need to adjust again, because the world is being upgraded around you. And that's not only with spatial navigation, it's also about how we address reality and how we perceive things. And I thought I was going down the right trail, and suddenly I was on a different trail that I normally would avoid, because it were going into a dark territory, a dark jurisdiction. And suddenly I was there, and I thought I was going another way, but that's because something had shifted, and where I normally walked had then been repositioned, or a new perception level had arisen. So these are the circumstances we are in as well. And most of the day yesterday, it was like trying to go back and reconnect and thinking, how did I think about business? What was going on? Kind of catching up on all of my thought forms that were on the other timeline and transport them or transfer them into the new timeline. And with that, also having new aspects and new viewpoints of, okay, what does that then mean? How do I deal with this on this new timeline? What are the propositions here? What are the possibilities here? What can I do with this new timeline? How do I actually work with it in business, as in, what does that mean for the whole academy courses? It does not mean anything for the courses per se, but the way we work with them, the way we implement them might have to be adapted a little bit so they are suitable for the energies of the new timeline. And that's as well going with what we call jumping timelines. And that also goes with, as I talked about a long time ago, and I will repeat it here, that the more we can get completed on one day, the better. Or we'll have to wait a full month to get back on the same type of information stream, because that's how we're going. What I'm getting with the reality as it is now, here in 2023, and will continue to do so, is that before we had this continued upgrading of it, now it's going to really upgrade in jumps. That's what I'm getting. The frequency network has been, the frequency fence or the frequency network around our planet has been changed. The technology that's being implemented is driving on a high amount of AI. We see more and more inside the base program, where we now have chatbots and we have AI we can communicate with, and it is both Google and Microsoft and OpenAI and all sorts of systems that are part of the internet are now using AI and are using AI bots. And they are literally deliberately working on, at Google as well, with a quantum computer, linking it up to AI. And once that begins to calculate all the possible answers to all the possible questions and begin to work with humans and interact and get more subtle information layers to its recorded information base, and then begin to spit it out in all the probabilities, then we're getting very, very close to some of the enhanced human technology of the future, which they are now implementing into this timeline, trying to expedite it up to a quicker or a faster pace of modification of the human DNA. And that is, of course, going to have ramifications as well, which means that those of us who are on board the transition dynamics, we will be pushed to move quicker and become more effective and work with things in a more advanced way with the new sciences, whereas the ones that are left behind, they will trot along in their little hamster wheel, wear out, and then no longer really contribute to much other than just walking around in their own circle, so to speak, working with the old text material, working with something that they found important and have found important their entire life, thinking they're still inventing new, but they're doing it within their dissolving paradigms, within the paradigms that are now coming under entropy, which means, and they have been that for a while, which means that no new science is really invented, new thinking processes are really being put in play, because they are working on code streams and timelines and information streams that are, code streams and timelines are the same, but information streams are kind of what we could call the input of the alien technology or the input of the original outer domain technology, such as the holographic teaching system. They are working on the prohibiting technologies of the old world order that did not allow for much progression, really, but just allowed for rebirth and relooping and these continuous Ouroboros dynamics where nothing really moved anywhere, but it was all about preserving what was and only creating small portions of progression. Whereas now we're moving into a territory where a higher amount of progression is possible, but we are not talking about it within the benevolent version of progression, as in to adapt and unfold and develop our energy system, our consciousness potentials. But we are talking about transformative processes run by machine worlds and within what we call the humanoid fifth dimensional of the artificial fifth dimension variety, where the goal is to get rid of the dark ones, take over their territory, and then adapt it into a new type of adjacent fifth dimensional feature that is in alignment with some of the adjacent realities that are now bordering into our system. And I'm not talking about the POM races because they will be pushed out. I'm talking about the new domain and the new interstellar races, if you want to put it that way, that are coming from parallel systems that are now entering into ours. Within what we could call variations of the original lineages, but took a detour after the timeline event. They did not take the full detour back to the holographic metaverse of the progressive races, but they developed their version of the LPU into still having incorporated technology, but working with it in a different way. So that's that type of group that are coming in now, and they are adapting the AI technology, the frequency fence, everything that we have got here out of the hands of the Orions and the third cycle races and the dark ones, but they're still going to occupy the fifth dimension and transform that and use that as a bridge into our cycle, our fifth cycle of the outer domain, because that's where we have viability. That's where we still have what we call genetics and code streams and information systems that can be upgraded and can be used for what we call transformative processes that will lead to a future civilization within our solar system. So these are some of the complex things that will come in with the new sciences and with the new understandings of, okay, what is business, and will there even be a business as we understand it? Will there be what we call transformative processes that goes under a sort of exchange rate where we are trading goods and services for other goods and services? Or are we going into a system where the the currency will be information, or as it is in many of these higher order systems under the parallel LPU dynamics, they are higher order to us, but they are not higher order in comparison to the parallel systems, but they do have they are not higher order in comparison to the progressive original holographic metaverse, but they are progressive compared to our system. Sorry about that. So they're kind of in between systems. They have used the energy system correctly to progress themselves, but they have not chosen to reconnect to the holographic metaverse. They have chosen to remain progressive in their way within the LPU dynamics, the less progressive universe, the alternate reality that was created as part of the original holographic metaverse project of upgrading the laggards or the races that were behind and were forced to go into Pralaya unless we created a specific in situ, a specific parallel universal structure where they could upgrade themselves using holographic teaching system and specific type of technologies that were imbued with different forms of consciousness potentials that would expedite their progression rate further and leading them to the Pillar Project was about leading these groups to a controlled, fast-paced, evolutionary, progressive process where they would quickly go through the pillars and by that reach the progression potentials that were needed to meet the criteria of the elevation into the sixth cycle that were happening in the holographic metaverse at the time. And that's why I keep referring back to saying, well, our goal is to reach the sixth cycle, but we have to complete the fourth first with the progression sciences and transition sciences and the transformative energy system, reach that level first. Then we go into the fifth cycle where we work with the radiation fields. And that's where we have atomic power and nuclear forces and the new kinetic processes of the sun. They're trying to harvest into new types of hydrogen, helium, toroidal sciences that will be sustainable energy for eternity, or 0.0 forms of energy. So again, using toroidal sciences to create what we call a perpetuating, self-generating process of energy that will never wear out, similar to the sun. But the point is, everything in this system will go into entropy eventually, so nothing is eternal. Everything will cease to exist at some point, no matter what level we're working on it. And the more we exploit what is there naturally, the resources, and exploiting them in the ways that we are just using it and then creating pollution or distortion because it's a wrongful use of energy, it's a wrongful use of energy of our system for selfish purposes, the quicker we will reach that momentum of entropy that will lead to the regression dynamics and by that begin to wear out our system. And that's hence the Ouroboros technology to try and keep it circulating on a certain level, creating a little bit of surplus, but not wearing it out. So that's the relooping of the Ouroboros, which of course we also seen has failed. So if what we do is for money alone, that's a wrongful use of energy. And yes, we do have to pay our bills. We are too easily getting aligned with the concepts of profit, doing whatever it takes to earn money, and we overlook the exchange rates as it is outlined in this course material. So this is from the page I'm reading back, reading again. So we must understand that when we think about business ideas, when we think about why we're doing this, why we're committing to doing this, that's principle 7, correct commitment. And that is, again, we say the optimal energies and the optimal level of commitment for our energy system, what's possible for our energy system. Why do we commit to doing what we're doing? It's not just about earning money. Oh, I got a good idea and I can get wealthy on it. That's not the line of thinking. Then the line of thinking is not, oh, I need to do this so I can pay my bill, because that's in a way going into kind of what we could call a lack, sense of lack, this kind of I haven't got enough mentality, which I myself has been hit by many times because I grew up in a family with little money. So I didn't have this feeling of whatever I wanted, I could get. I always grew up with this feeling, yes, you can't have this, you can't have that. So I grew up with this limitation mentality all the time. Others could get, I couldn't get. So that's part of my process as well when we talk about Why did I choose the bootstrap model? Because I wanted to move forward with this, but there were not only psychological limitations I had from my childhood, they were just a repeat. They were just hammered into me by the factions to show me, yeah, you are under the enslavement program, you're allowed to do so and so much. So our childhood in that manner, what we've experienced as children as part of our family dynamics, have colored us in our perception of how we are around money. For instance, my father was always stressed out of it because he never had enough, and he didn't. He was had borrowed a lot of money because he was building a house where we used to live, and now he had to pay off the debt of that one, and he was stressed with his work and everything. So he was always in this feeling of, what do I need to do to earn more money, and frustrated about it and angry about it. And my mom, she wasn't into the whole business thing, as you know, so she was feeling helpless, and I was in between feeling these things and at the same time having that constant, there's not enough. I didn't even ask for my weekly allowance. I just said, no, I better not do that. There were certain things I didn't ask for because I knew then my dad would get angry and my mom would be sad and they would yell at each other, what have you. And then I would feel that it was my fault because I asked for something. So I learned not to ask for anything. This has also colored me in my life, as in kind of, I don't reach out and ask for help. I don't reach out, ask for things. I try to solve it myself. And we can say, is that good or bad thing? There's always in between. It's never either or. So in between that, the balance point of that one is, of course, to learn, okay, these dynamics are not really mine, but what are mine? And there are still the factional limitations, which I have been shown again and again and again when I began to expand and say, well, my base program conditioning is not mine. That belongs to my parents. So what is mine? And then remembering the pillar project and my position in that and saying, wow, I got something actually to add to this reality. I actually got something that can be used in this reality to rebuild its progression dynamics, and there get hit by other levels of limitation and other types of retaliation and the trialing and whatever the confusion about the factions as I woke up. What is she doing here? She's not supposed to be here. What's going on here? And this whole adjustment process for everybody under the old world order, as in kind of, yeah, that's not possible that one of these are inside the enslavement program. How did she get here? And all of these confusion there is around this, where some of you have a clear pedigree going with that one, your pedigree level, what we call with dogs, you have that, a pedigree dog is where you have, I forgot the name, but you know the lineage where it's born from, why it's there, and who's the parents are, and what the DNA is, and all these kind of things. The ones that came here as part of the wars or a part of the enclosure when it arose, as with the hijacking, all these kind of things, you kind of have that in your energy system. It can be rolled out. They know exactly who you are, where you are, what project you belong to, whether this is a viable project or it's an ongoing project or it has been a abandoned project. And those of you who have been abandoned, you're left to your own to wear down, whatever, in the incarnational cycles, because the relooping dynamics are wearing out and the old technology is breaking apart. Hence also the energy systems that are connected to it, which were some of the first thing I began when I began recreating myself, was first and foremost get rid of the solar cross, the reincarnational cross in the root chakra, but also disconnecting myself from the old world order pillar projects under the prohibiting technologies, and that going on in all of the different layers of what it takes to get out of the enslavement programs. So that's, of course, part of it as well, which we will discover when we do business, as in kind of what program are we under, and that will set possibilities and limitations to what we can do as business owners and what we want to do out in the base program, whether we are under the old world order or we are being transitioned into the new, where we are kind of in a social experiment where we're being allowed to do certain things but not to a full extent because they don't know the ramifications of it. We could say in the old world order program, things were very limited. There was this karmic limitation to it, so that if you did something specifically, you would create so much distortion energy that life itself would ensure that you would either be drawn to the underworld forces, or you would be drawn to the regression spirals and the clone programs, or you would be drawn under the dark ones and their retaliation programs, or what have you. So you would learn the hard way that this is not the way to go around it. And if people were continuing doing that in oblivion, well, then that would be the result of their lives. They would then be dragged to that reality that they had worked within, thinking they were doing good or what have you, or knowingly they were doing ill. And as we know it from the Middle Ages, if you continue that one, you will end in hell, literally. So this is the way to work with energy. That's how the Old World Order program kind of self-adjusted. The problem was that since most lost the ability to understand how to work with energy, most of the human population ended up in the artificial fourth dimensional programs, or they ended up in the underworld, or they ended up under the dark ones, which were technically, you could say that's not a viable plan for a continuation of the system. Hence also the reason why it wore out. So you can say the Dracos, they implement technology that the elders probably not understood the full extent of, and that is where it ended. Unless, of course, they said, well, it has to go anyway, so it might as well go this way. We never know that. But that's not where I want to go here. But these dynamics are part of our understanding of when we do business, and be observant of it's not just to get profit, because that's not why we do business. That should not, for me, that should not be the value behind what we're doing. It's about the exchange rate. The exchange rate goes with the commitment, and it goes with the understanding of I give, not that I give some to get some, and it's not I give not to get anything, as in kind of completely humble, I give, and then I don't get anything. But it is an in-between where we understand that what we work with, we don't work ambitiously for the result of a progression rate. We don't work ambitiously to I do this so I get a higher purification. I do this so I follow the standards, or I do this to get a high progression rate, because then it's not really what we could say from a standpoint of understanding of reality and the dynamics of working for the unity field. Then it is for a personal ambition. Then it's from our personal standpoint. Oh, I have this type of business and I do this and this and this because I know it will give me a high purity rate. We can say it's good to have that observance, but the intention behind it is suddenly an ambition that's drive from an ego structure. It's driven from that structure of, well, I might not do profit, but at least I can get a higher purity rate. I can then get a better next life. Or I might get out of the enslavement program, or I do this because I feel it's unfair, or I do this because I'm angry with this, or what have you. And I've gone through all of these stages as well. And these are stages in our activation processes where we work through all of these human emotions that will be turned around and pushed up to the surface, so we can look at them, so we can work with them, and then come to that weird balanced understanding of how do I actually work with this. So I both have the transformative processes going on in my own energy system, but at the same time are also transforming the reality field, but are also at the same time in this in between, keeping the balance so I don't create distortion. So it's this fine line between activation and transformation and integration, where it's this slow pattern of a spiral where we work on one level, complete all the levels there, go to the next level, complete all the levels there, and go to the next and next. And that's why I set the most optimal level of commitment, so that we understand that each spiral that we are on, each arm of the spiral, or each field of the spiral, that we have to complete in its full rollout, so that it's not just about what we want to achieve, but it is actually about how to master energy and consciousness. It's about whatever comes our way is an opportunity for change. Of course, when we're in the middle of something sad and horrible, it's difficult to have that this is just happening so I can learn from it. We can, of course, delude ourselves to take that standpoint and then not have the emotional reaction to it. So there we have to be in between, also allowing ourselves that, yes, I have an emotional reaction to it, and yes, it sucks, and yes, what have you, but learning to deal with it in an appropriate manner so that we clear out what needs to be cleared out and not create more distortion. So that's the work with the progression energies. And that goes with business strategy as well. That goes with business partners. That's just extending the way we're working with energy into these base program circumstances. And instead of, for me, the whole challenge right now is as going back in is like being exploded, being with new information levels, and at the same time also all the old stuff is coming up. So as I refer to as being thrown in the deep end of the pool, and then at the same time cannonballs and water cannons and water balloons, what you call water whatever, a lot of stuff is being thrown at me. Literally everything from the garden is being thrown at me as me being in the middle of going out in a hurricane or something, and still have to try and find my way and adapt to all of these things in one go, as it typically is with me. It's not this slow process. It's like, okay, now I shift gear and then I have to adjust everything in one go. And of course, this can be difficult for all of us to adjust that way. But as with everything, we will learn by doing, continuously expand our awareness of, okay, I've seen this before. I know how to work with this. Last time I did it that way, but if it hasn't changed, it's because it's a reloop, because with the same time of the month, a month later, or is it because I didn't clear it out well enough, or is it because it's a program that runs with the old world order dynamics? And then what do I need to get rid of these dynamics and move into to the new transition timelines and code streams that are available for us? Do I want to go there? So there's a lot of questions when we work about progression energies. Do I want to move on, or do I want to stay behind? So that's the choice that are coming in from the new domains and the new interstellar races, because they continue their progression journey still within the LPU. So they are still bound by the original features of the LPU that were supposed to assist the laggards in upgrading. So we have that choice. Now we are at this huge point in time where we're going to a new grand cycle. They are moving there as well. And they're asking us, do you want to stay? Do you want to now choose to go into quote unquote pralaya? This time it means to be technically taken out of the game completely. But do you choose to do that and follow the old rule set? Or do you now choose to do what you actually came here to do, still within what we could say the LPU dynamics? Or are you aiming to get back to the progressive dynamics of the original holographic metaverse via the restoration program? Whereas 2 years ago, we had the same choice, but there we were kind of stopped in it due to the parallel universal matrix races and the dark ones and what have you. And for those of us who are going the transition path, or whatever that will lead to, whatever type of fifth cycle we will get into, well, at least we are working our way out of these prohibiting technologies, these old world order dynamics, these old world order jurisdictions and pitfalls, and are then changing our ways in manners that will lead us now to a different territorial rules of engagement, a different setup that will aim for, we could say, does it change this reality? No, but it plays on the relative reality dynamics. So our perception of reality will change. It will look the same, but our perception of it will change. And as that changes, so will our energy system. And as our energy system changes, so will our ideas and our creational projects. They will change accordingly. So that's also going to play in. So with that question that I ask, and all of this getting out there processes, and getting out there is both in terms of getting on the map as a business, as in kind of getting into virtual reality. As I've talked about, I just launched my business as part of Google Business. So it's now part of the search engine, and being verified to have my business there, and are clicking on the different things they allow us to have to describe our business and put up, not ads, but actually put in events and different forms of heads up and little things there. So it will be part of the search engine and be listed higher when people are looking for my material than if I did not. I would be at the bottom of this. Is kind of where they give you a carrot. If you want to be part of the search engine, you have to actually enlist and become part of our search engine by being verified and get a code and being registered as a business within the Google search machinery. And I've chosen to do that, including also doing on Coursera.org. I'm doing there are 5 or 7 courses that Google has put out there of how to become a marketer within their search engines and the ways that they have built up their browser dynamics and search engine dynamics and their virtual reality that as a business maker and as a marketer, there are different methods and different technologies that you can engage with to get out there and be seen. Bing has its own, Microsoft has its own. There are many different platforms we can work on, but I'm just choosing that one because that's kind of, for a long time, these insectoid avian groups are not too much in my hair, so to speak, compared to some of the other newer platforms that are very, very AI driven. But this is going to be AI driven as well. The question is, who is then taking over and what type of future group will then be running Google and be running YouTube and be running that conglomerate, and which one will then be the ones that are also running Microsoft later on down the path and onward and so forth. So these are, again, some of the changes that will come in play. So that will change the getting out there. We are already seeing, or I am already seeing, some of you might or might not, the whole Google interface is changing because of the AI that are being implemented now. We are also seeing, for instance, Instagram, where there are so many fake profiles that are now run by bots. For a long time, I talked about how the different groups, for instance, the factions behind Facebook, the factions behind the new technocratic groups of CEOs that have earned a very high amount of money, they have already created these false bots and false algorithms where they are trading with each other and then pumping up their virtual reality wealth. So you can say, well, is it wealth in actual money? No, it's virtual reality wealth, not Bitcoins, not these cryptocurrencies, hidden currencies, but actually right in our face dynamics where we say, well, the Amazon boss, which is no longer there, but Bozer, he used to have these enormous amount of money. Well, did he actually get them by actual sales or were it pumped up sales? So these are the algorithms that can create wealth by trading amongst each others, playing with the stock market, playing with consumers, artificial consumers that are not there. And we're seeing that with the bots that are now being implemented as profiles, creating likes, creating dislikes, so that people will rate higher or lower in the search engines within Instagram or YouTube or what have you. So that's also being played in as it is. So this is where the factions go in and control who's going to be the ones that will be allowed to do business, so to speak, and who are the ones that will be put at the bottom of the hierarchy and by that vanish into oblivion where nobody will find them on the internet. So that's another way to create algorithms that ensure the ones that are chosen to do business will then be in business because people are being led their way. They are part of the search engines and they will appear to people, whereas the ones that are not, they will simply not be seen. Nobody will see their material. Nobody will notice that they are out there. So that's also some of the things that we must ask ourselves. What are the purpose and function of getting out there seen from the perspective of the correct use of energy? And here I use the correct use of energy because that is to avoid distortion. And how does the correct use of energy apply to the progression dynamics of our transformative energy system to build up the code layers needed to truly do the transition? So these are completely different questions we must ask ourselves. So with that, for now, I will end this podcast and go into the next one where we will continue asking these questions, where I'll begin the next podcast asking them, and then we will work with these questions. Thank you.